I'm going to start not with the tariffs because we had a question into the chat, and then I'll get to the tariffs, and it just is top of mind. And it's about the military adventurism that Trump might actually be part of. It started this comment from a viewer was about China. And I was saying I didn't think that a hot war with China was likely. I just didn't feel as though Trump had the stomach for that or the inclination. But Iran was pointed to as a potential theater of war, as Netanyahu met with Trump and might have been nudging him toward that. That was the notion that this viewer had. Can you speak to that?
Well, Donald has talked about if the Iranians don't come to heel on their nuclear weapons program, we're going to bomb them. Now, the Iranians have been very smart about breaking up how they're building their nuclear weapons, putting them in many different locations in very deep bunkers that probably are not amenable even to bunker buster bombs. An attack on Iran, of course, is an act of war and could lead to a lot more than what we would like to have. The Iranians are a threat not just to Israel, but they're perceived as a threat by Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, among others. So this warmongering by a guy who ran for peace and promised, we weren't going to have any military adventures. So he goes around threatening Canada, which is taking it very seriously. Greenland says he won't rule out military action against Denmark, which is a NATO ally, and the Panama Canal, all just tell you that anybody who trusts what Donald says is a fool. But clearly, Netanyahu would like us to take out the Iranians, both the regime and their capacity to make nuclear weapons. Donald has no sophistication about this. He has no understanding of the history of the Middle East. If Donald were asked in a place where he couldn't get away, he could be tied down like a deposition. So, Mr. Trump, what is the difference between a Sunni and a Shia in the Muslim world? Why does it matter to America? And where does Wahhabism fit into this? He would have to go off and tell some, well, it's really great, and get you off the subject, because he doesn't have a clue. But he does have his finger on the button. And, we just blew $250 million dropping bombs on the Houthis to no effect. And this shouldn't surprise anybody. The post-World War II review of bombings by the U.S. and by the Germans showed that bombing just doesn't work. It's not effective. It terrorizes populations for sure, but they just keep on going and producing. George Ball tried to get Lyndon Baines Johnson to understand that bombing North Vietnam and bombing in Vietnam was not going to work, and he couldn't get him to listen to him, even though the analysis was quite clear. There are selected examples where they can be effective, but they're not, large-scale bombing, carpet bombing, and Donald knows so little, he didn't know why there's a memorial over the USS Arizona at Pearl Harbor. So you should be very worried that people are selling him on this idea that what will make him a great president is bombing people.
Well, I was saying also the irony of he wants that military parade for his birthday, from the Pentagon to the White House. It's a 4-mile long parade of tanks and weapon systems that are then missiles. It's a dictatorial flex. It's what you associate with North Korea.
Very Kremlinist.
Yeah. But the irony, of course, is this is a guy who slithered out of military service with with the Vietnam shuffle with his bone spurs. Yeah. All right. Now let's pivot to the other thing that Trump has done. The wanton destruction of the American economy and turning the world economy on its side. Speak to this, if you would, please, David.
I just turned over to the editor DC Report a piece about this very issue, and it will have a lot of stuff that will connect dots I haven't seen anybody do. And it's a very short piece, only 800 words. So it'll go up, I hope, later today or tomorrow, and I hope people go read it. But the damage that can be done here, it goes way beyond what's broadly being discussed. For example, the US dollar, the greenback that Donald keeps running down and saying is really worthless. And I was just debating on TV in the Middle East, a Trump Republican, about how the dollar, especially because of Biden, is becoming worthless. It's the world reserve currency. 60% of business transactions worldwide, international transactions, are done in dollars. You know, when the Australians sell liquefied natural gas to China, they do it in dollars. And that's a huge subsidy to us. Once we sell a dollar and it goes overseas and doesn't come back, it's like a gift. It's free money to us. And that our currency is used is terrific. Now, I don't think there's any chance that the Chinese renminbi, the yuan, will become the world reserve currency because nobody trusts the Chinese government on private property. But could the euro or a new currency, could perhaps even the Japanese yen become the world reserve currency? Yeah, you betcha it sure could. And Donald is enjoying right now that 70 countries are all eager to bend the knee to him because it feeds his ego and his desperate emptiness inside. But the tariff proposal he put out there is stupid, and I do mean stupid, on so many levels. I mean, we've all heard about the island that only has penguins that's in the list. There's another island that only has British and American soldiers, the only people who occupy it. It's on the list. The way they calculated this was to take half the difference in our trade in goods and then divide and take half of that number. And that was the percentage rate they took, which is just ridiculous. But Donald doesn't, once he gets an idea in his head, change. You know, I mean, most famously in my view, or most importantly in my view, when he was asked in 2016, well, as a Christian, Mr. Trump, tell us about the last time you asked God for forgiveness. Now, anybody who's an actual Christian knows that you're supposed to be in a constant state of seeking forgiveness because every day you do things, whether you recognize it or not, that offend other people. Oh my goodness, I sound woke. And because, of course, Christianity is wokeness. And Donald said, after sort of a quizzical pause, why would I do that? I've never done anything in my life that requires asking forgiveness of anyone. This is how out of touch he is about this. We can turn friends into enemies. The new Prime Minister of Canada has said our relationship as close allies is over. We could end up being told, hey, take your 800 military bases. We're the only country with massive military bases around the world. The Russians have a couple of bases like Syria. I think the British have a couple in the Middle East, in the Indian subcontinent. We're the only country in the world, 800 known U.S. military bases, and every now and then we find out about another one that nobody knew about. Well, a lot of countries could just say, hey, go home. Oh, by the way, you know, when your ships need to fueling or the engine breaks and you need to bring it into dry dock, go away, sink your ship. We don't care. Oh, you want to keep bombers, fighter planes, transport planes and helicopters somewhere near an area you think could be trouble? Nah, we don't want you. Go back to America. I mean, he can isolate us. He can make us a pariah nation. And Donald has no idea of this. He has no sophistication about all of this. And underneath all of this, and this next part is not in my piece, but Donald is not a believer in economic growth. He is a mercantilist. Mercantilism was the dominant economic theory before Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations in 1776, which explained competitive market capitalism, which so far in human experience is the best economic idea we've come up with. Doesn't mean it's perfect. It's got lots of problems. You have to control it, which we're not doing. I would argue that we're mostly corporate socialism, not competitive market economics. But before that, mercantilism was the idea that if you, Mark, have a piece of gold, then that means I don't have it. And the only way for me to get richer is to get your gold. So when the Spanish sent the Armada and thought they'd take over England and get rid of Queen Elizabeth I, it was because British pirates in the Caribbean sacked the town of Trujillo City, I think that's the correct name of it, in Honduras, and stole all the gold that the Spanish had mined and collected. And it was like the umpteenth time they had done this to the Spanish, and the government in Madrid said, we had enough of this. We're going to go get the Brits. Because that was the belief in the world. There's no additional wealth. There's only the amount of wealth that gold represents. And that's how Donald has always seen the world. If you have a dollar, I need to get it from you so I can be rich. Not, hey, we can create more dollars together by being smart.
Well, what's odd to me is that he reps that he is this master negotiator, and you kind of look in negotiation for a win-win, and he really took office, David, and you thought, I did, hey, dude, don't touch anything. You've inherited the leading economy in the world. Keep your hands off everything and just, hold rose garden ceremonies, etc. Instead, he's decided to touch everything. And as I say, drag the American economy to the ground.
If you think back to when George W. Bush became president with a huge budget surplus, for all of the last 4 years of the Clinton administration, the government was in surplus. It's deja vu all over again. Let's inherit something and then just wreck it. And Donald is doing a really good job of wrecking this. And, one of the things that came out, the New York Times revealed a couple of days ago, and I've been very critical of my former newspaper's reporting, but I thought this was genius, is that Navarro, the former UC Irvine economics professor who holds lots of just bizarre views, Peter Navarro has often cited the work of another economist who it turns out is a fiction. It's an anagram of Peter Navarro's name. The guy doesn't exist. And this is the kind of unscrupulous, incompetent, fringe, and I'm being polite, thinking people who Donald Trump attracts and is attracted to.
I mean,
so why would you trust him about anything? He doesn't.
The out and out lies. And I think, and you've written about this, but Trump likes the shiny objects, and Navarro is kind of a shiny object from a media standpoint. He won't slow down. You can't overtalk him. He just keeps on speaking with this divine confidence. And I suspect that Trump, is in the thrall of that kind of guy.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And that's how people like Steve Bannon get into his world. He must be at some level listening a little bit to Bannon. And Bannon has warned, I think quite correctly, that if you go after Medicaid, that's the federal program for healthcare for poor people, that benefits Republicans far more than Democrats. I mean, one of the things about
that is to say, Medicaid benefits Republicans more than
Democrats. That's right, Medicaid. Yeah. I mean, the Democrats have basically used to be thought of as the party of the poor, LBJ, the war on poverty, though I think it was more of a few skirmishes, not a war. But Republicans now rely on the votes of poor people, poor working class people who think that the billionaires really care about them and want to take care of them. And horrible things are about to happen. I mean, the cuts that have been made at the FDA, we're going to have more diseases, more people die from food poisoning. We've already had 3 people die from measles, and it's moved RFK Jr. just a bit to say that measles vaccinations are good, but he continues to attack MMR vaccines per se. We're going to, I don't think there'll be a change among the people who are poor and support Trump until, I'm sorry, my child is going to die because I can't get medical care for my child. Wait a minute, I had medical care. What do you mean? Grandma died because insulin went from $35 a month to $1,000. What? Who did that? And when this starts to happen, you're going to see Trump blame the Democrats. He's going to find a way. What he'll probably say is, well, they spent all the money we had, so it's gone, and I don't have no choice. It's the Democrats who forced this upon you, which is utter nonsense. But given how good Donald has, how successful he's been at selling nonsense to people, just watch, it'll happen.
Well, I mean, it is the most effective spin I've ever seen. I mean, they get onto the, on blast on Fox News Channel and blame Biden, an economic time bomb, et cetera, whatever. They'll assign it to Biden and the Democrats somehow. In our limited time, I want to get you to another question that came up today, and that was, is this plan on the part of Trump to wreck the American economy part of a gift to the billionaire boys club that is his cabinet and all of his constellation of people around him to swoop in and get great deals in the stock market, on real estate that's wildly discounted. In other words, from the ashes of the American economy that he has incinerated, will his people be able to benefit? And is it really just a plan as a gift to all of them?
It's not a plan. Causality is not the issue here. It's correlation. Look, lots of people go broke when there's an expanding economy, and lots of people get rich when the economy is contracting. And if you got out of the stock market a few months ago, and generally you can't time markets. If you're an ordinary person, it's not a good idea. But if you sold your mutual funds and bought, put it in cash, money market funds, which are paying about 4%, or bonds, not bond funds, but bonds, because you know when they're going to mature, you're going to be fine riding this through. But very wealthy people are heavily invested in the stock market. They don't have a lot of options about that. They're going to suffer some loss. The problem is, so if you've got $5 billion and all of a sudden you've only got 3.5, gee, it must be tough to get by on 3.5 billion. For people who are just retiring, this is really bad. If the first 2, 3, 4 years of your retirement are in a down economy, you can easily run out of money even if you oversave. So there will be a lot of distressed sales of assets. There are going to be significant numbers of small businesses that are going to fail. I worry about my oldest son's business. He's owns a retail store that sells tchotchkes. And a lot of it comes from China. So higher prices for what he gets in, people are going to have less money to spend. I worry a lot about his business. And I've talked to some other people I know who own small businesses who are very, very worried that they will end up having to fold their business, maybe even file bankruptcy, and wait for this to come back. And then imagine if you were, Mark, a homeowner in Northern Virginia or Maryland near DC, and you need to sell your house for whatever reason. Well, housing prices there are about to fall sharply because of the tens of thousands of federal workers in the Washington market that have been just let go most cases for no reason whatsoever. And that's going to tank those markets. So there's going to be a lot of economic carnage, but this is, in Donald's view, we're taking medicine. It will make us stronger, and it's not part of a plot. He's not capable of that kind of plot. He is not a strategist by any stretch of the imagination, and he's not very good at tactics. What he's good at is, I have this idea in my head. I don't know where it came from. I will figure out how to make people think that's a genius idea.
Yeah, no, the con is his thing. Okay, sort of rapid fire, David, because I know our time is limited a bit.
Yep.
Also got this email. Is it true that China is pumping money into Trump's Bitcoin scam and filling his pockets that way? If so, tanking the American economy and global markets, we create a vacuum for China to take over all that European manufacturing and distribution that we lost. That would make sense for Trump's reciprocity. I don't know. There's a lot there, but I do think. Go ahead. Yeah.
I don't know who's using real money to buy fake money, which is what Bitcoin and its like are. But China is the biggest winner of the Trump administration. Their power and influence in the world and Asia is going to increase because of Trump. And the Chinese don't think like we do in terms of 90 days or 2 years or 4-year elections. They think like the Catholic Church. We're here forever.
Right.
And so they're very strategic. They're very highly educated.
They're meeting with the European Union right now. I mean, there's already a rapprochement there.
Yes, and the Chinese are going to be very strategic about all this and very smart. They have some of their own problems. They've been fiscally grossly irresponsible, but so long as China can borrow in its own currency, just as the U.S. government borrows in its own currency, they cannot go broke. They can cause inflation. They can cause some economic damage to ordinary Chinese, but the government cannot go broke. And Xi will come out well at the end of this. For among many other reasons, he's a serious person, unlike Donald.
This from Michael D. David, what would Putin do differently if he wanted to destroy the U.S. economy? Is this not textbook Putin coming out of the Oval Office?
Yeah, yes. And Putin, let's remember, his economy is really in super bad shape. They've been reduced to barter for deals. They literally had to import potatoes to feed their population. I mean, Russia importing potatoes. And they've just announced, talking ceasefire, the biggest draft in history of that country. And they've used up these tanks that are easy to destroy because they're from the 1950s and 60s. They're using horse and donkey drawn carts to get food and other things to the front. And while the Ukrainians are certainly under a lot of pressure, they've proven to be a heck of a lot smarter and better military, both strategy and tacticians, than the Russians.
But to Michael's point, does it feel almost Putin-esque the way Trump is wrecking the economy?
Yeah, I don't think Putin's doing that. I think Donald's doing that. And I don't think Donald's doing it so much at Putin's behest as he's not doing it at his behest. He doesn't know what he's doing. He just doesn't know what he's doing. Donald is not a businessman. He is a cash extractor.
Yeah, no, I mean, you've made this point so well through your many writings, and it is true that he's not the mastermind. Yet in all the spins and in all the kind of calculations that one does around his quote policies, it's sort of ascribed to that. So I'm going to get you out of here on time. I think. Are we good? Let me just.
Yeah, you got about 3 minutes.
Okay, great. So. David, in looking at the days ahead with Trump, I mean, he's just threatened the Chinese with, as you know, what would end up being 150% tariff on all Chinese goods. I mean, I know there's no way to really know, but he feels as though he's now responding with all ego and bravado, and he is capable of pulling the trigger on this stuff.
Oh, I won't be surprised in the least if Donald actually imposes these terrific tariffs. China is replacing us as the major trading partner of a number of countries around the world, and this will just speed that process. And the Chinese, their manufacturing capacity is now up at the level of ours. They are the dominant supplier of electric vehicles around the world. Donald, of course, dumps on electric vehicles except for Teslas because they're made by his patron, again, co-president Elon Musk. And China has been, very smartly around the world doing things, buying up land to grow food in Africa and water rights and ports with heavy equipment and all sorts of other projects all over the world and building goodwill. And I predict to you that China, before long, will start trying to replace the void left by Donald Trump shutting down AID. Those big sacks of grain, the boxes with medicine that say a gift from the American people are going to say a gift from the generous people of China. And that will do us enormous damage that cannot be easily undone.
Last question. What's going to happen with the Venezuelans? I'll just put it in quotes, but those who were, and now with SCOTUS having given the Trump administration more room on them, they're down in El Salvador in prison. Will those innocents, there are 3 of them that we know of, ever get out?
That remains to be seen because the Supreme Court's actions are on matters of, was this the right court to bring your case, or did you frame the issue the right way? They're avoiding substance. But here's what you should be worried about. 2 things. One, the lack of regard for the individual and their liberty. And we've seen this from the Supreme Court. We have executed people we now have incredibly good reason to believe were truly innocent because the courts wouldn't listen to new evidence or junk science that was presented, things like that. The second thing you need to worry about is that a lot of our Constitution says you can't do things, but there's no enforcement mechanism. Donald right now is collecting money from the dictator in Saudi Arabia through the golf tournament he just went to at his place, the Doral Country Club near the Miami airport. How are you going to enforce the emoluments clause of the Constitution? Because none of us have standing, the courts say, to bring it. Only Congress could do it. That's not going to happen. His party's in control. we're going to quickly discover there are significantly larger problems in our Constitution because it was based on the premise that people of goodwill would run the government, and we now have someone of ill will.
David, I'll let you go. Thank you. Grateful for your time
Talk
always.
to you next week, pal.
Look forward to next week.
On
David
Wednesday
K.
next week.
Wednesday next week. All right. David K. Johnston.
Bye-bye.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.